Rob, how you doing?
Hello?
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how's it going?
Good, good, good.
I like the shirt.
Trying to live the brand.
Love it, love it.
I tend to wear pretty much what you're wearing on a regular work day, but when I have to show up and be slightly more glamorous, this is my dress up shirt.
That's my excuse. I don't want to like upstage you, so I'll let you be glamorous.
You need to know I'm not wearing trousers. I mean, I'm naked, waist down, but it seemed to work.
Whatever works for you, right? Like,
That's right. So this is good, right? You know that classic when you're worried and fretting about the technology, it doesn't betray you, but it's only when you take it for granted that it stabs you in the back.
yeah, fair enough. You know what I think I did incorrectly last time is I invited you as a host and realized I can't invite hosts that aren't like WorkTango people.
Got it.
So you weren't even as a panelist last time, which is why you didn't even get that
Right.
invite until earlier. So completely my fault, and but it looks to be working okay.
It
Uh,
does.
One quick question, actually, I forgot yesterday was, do you typically like to provide the slides later or just the recording of the webinar works?
I don't really provide the slides because honestly, my slides are almost entirely useless.
Yeah, unless you're
So
talking to them.
I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to give you the slides. You need to take notes on this.
Okay, cool.
And I'll make that point. I mean, you may say that in the intro, but I'll also make that point as we go along around. Make sure you're writing this down because now's the chance to capture this stuff.
Okay, perfect. That works. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, I think. So the other thing too is on the way Zoom is set up is that what'll show up for people is who's talking.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you want both people to show up or,
Yeah. So it doesn't matter in the big scheme of things. It doesn't matter that much.
yeah.
I am all for a sense of these are two interesting, bizarrely good-looking men who are part of this, as opposed to it's an anonymous voice chatting away in the background. I don't know who they are. I mean,
Yeah.
we both have a nice personality, so why wouldn't we have people see that and connect with us?
Okay, cool. See if I can set that up. I guess the other thing too, so you're going to share your screen, right? So maybe
Yep.
if you want to just go do that, then we can see what this
Sure.
looks and feels like.
Oop. That's interesting. Here we go.
Oh, wow. Big screen here. All right. Make that smaller.
Share screen. Huh. That's very weird.
Are you sharing your screen or the application?
I'm sharing the screen, I think. Yeah.
Because you can do one of two things. When it comes up, it tells you share the screen or share like the PowerPoint application or whatever you're
Okay.
using PDF. And I usually, that's how I've dealt with that in the past.
What do you normally do? Do you
I
share screen?
I usually just share my screen and just
Yeah.
making sure nothing popping up or anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just old school trust that more than the application.
I do too. How does that look to you?
So that looks good. I mean, I can see just your screen right now and just your video wherever I put it on my screen, basically.
Perfect. I think we can consider this good to go then.
Yeah, I think so. So what I will just double check. There's a couple of notes I have on like making sure um everything kind of works from a video standpoint. I guess a couple of quick notes is that attendees can ask questions in the Q&A section. So
Right.
I've moved that. You're on one screen, correct? You're not on two
I am,
screens.
yeah.
Okay.
But I've got both the Q&A and the chat opened.
Oh, okay. Cool. So what'll happen is as things come in the Q&A, typically I put it so it's not anonymous. So people's names will show up. We can address them, and then as they come up, we'll if you see them or I see them, we can kind of chime in. And there's a way you can just say it's answered, and just
Okay.
to remove them from open versus answered. But that's pretty straightforward in terms of I'll tell people that they can ask questions and we'll get to them in due time.
Okay, perfect.
The chat, I don't assume anyone's going to be using the chat much, but if they do, we'll take care of it. We'll just let them know.
I'm gonna ask people to open the chat and use it. So when we check in, I'm going to get them to write some stuff down. So we should see a bunch of stuff flowing through it, but it's not going to be kind of needs to be acted upon. It's as much to get them engaged in writing and being involved in the content.
Okay, perfect. So you prefer chat over the Q&A, I guess, right?
In some ways it's like easier to have it all in one place. So I'd say encourage people to use the chat as their primary piece. And if people are like, I'm not very good at listening and I've opened up the Q&A, we'll see those coming through as well.
Okay, cool. And then, so I'm basically going to introduce everyone, talk about the topic and just, personally why I love it and why, after meeting you, why I think it's super important. Just do quick housekeeping. They'll receive a follow-up link with the video. Make sure you use the chat version. It'll be an interactive webinar. And then I'll dump into just kind of an introduction for you. And then you could switch over, move the slides and stuff to get things going. And at the end, I'll just do kind of a follow-up. So
love it.
Yeah.
I think we're locked and loaded.
Cool. Slides were moving okay on your side? Sorry, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And then just as a quick heads up, right? As soon as we connected, we were at 213 registrants. So made the jump up. So worked out nicely.
We crossed the magical 200 number.
Yeah, exactly. With a little bit of elbow grease. And and I guess on my end, my audio, you sound good to me. Do I sound okay for you?
You do? Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm in a quieter room. There's a big event going on here, so I'm trying to be quiet and a little recently painted empty room.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
With a little bit of branding in the background as well, so that's ideal.
It's meant to just cover the 2 holes that are there because we're doing construction.
That's funny.
I was like, what? I don't want to move a big bookcase. That's the easiest and lightest thing we can move over.
Perfect. That's perfect. That's good.
Cool. So so for the next, 15 or minutes or so, perfect. I'm just going to get some work done. You can too.
Perfect. I'm thinking the same.
Yeah. Attendees can't join until I broadcast.
Okay.
So what I'll do is probably 5 minutes before I'll broadcast, but just put us on mute.
Yep. Perfect.
And then the moment we go live, then we're basically be live. The moment I take us off mute, then we can go.
That's perfect.
Do you know how to mute yourself too easily on the bottom left?
Yeah, I do.
I don't think you'll need to, but until after. But okay, cool.
Perfect. I'll see you in a bit.
Yeah. Cheers.
All right. Cheers, man.
To go over your message. Here's your first new message. Hi, Michael. This is Avery talking through Tech Operations for WX. I was just calling to follow up with you on next steps with the conference community that knows about. I just want to see where we're going to go with that. What we did last night was a great opportunity. We raised about $450,000 in sales from that. It's a very large team event, and we were able to secure the final keynote session for you. You can give me a call back. My number is 407-376-4965. Look forward to talking to you. Take care. Bye. We've hit the end of your message. To scrap this message. Okay, we've scrapped that message. We've hit the end of your messages.
Hi, is that Anne-Marie? I am good. How are you doing? That's great. Hey, look, I have not, I didn't, for some reason, didn't get the original email laying out the opportunity. So having just picked up your voicemail and seen an email back from Ben, I'm like, I'm sorry to keep you hanging. I just haven't seen what I'm responding to. So any chance you could send the email to mbs@boxofcrayons.com? Perfect. Okay. 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 Perfect. Got it. ping me the details, and I've got meetings basically stretching into most of the rest of today. But if I can get a reply to you by first thing tomorrow, will that work? No problem. Sorry for inadvertently holding things up. All right, Anne-Marie, take care. Bye-bye.
That's some Dylan in the background there.
It is Bob Dylan moaning away.
Nice, I like it.
Yeah, I love Bob Dylan because A, he's so brilliant with language, and B, he and I have about the same singing capacity.
It's amazing how some of those guys made it famous on the singing side of things.
I know.
All right.
Perfect.
So I don't know if you want to leave your video off until we start, or
Why don't we do that?
yeah, so we'll stop video, both of us now. And then what I'll do is I'll mute ourselves and I'll broadcast. So basically, we'll go to like, people can start joining. And then once we get to like right on time, I'll just give a quick heads up that we'll give, a minute for people to join, and then we'll get started.
Perfect. I love that.
All right, cool. So I'm going to go on mute now. If you need anything, just send me over chat.
Sounds good.
Cheers. Hello, everyone. We are just about to get the webinar started. People are filtering in and attendees are joining. So we're going to give it another 45 seconds or so to make sure that everyone has their headsets all set up, their audio all figured out, or if they're phoning in. And just a heads up, we'll be starting in a short moment. All right. Hello, everyone. What better way to get interactive with having this on video? So hello, my name is Rob Catalano. Really great to see everyone here. I want to welcome all of our attendees that are continuing to jump in. You can also get rid of my video if you don't want to see me either. You can just kind of close it at the top there, so feel free to. But I just wanted to invite everyone, or sorry, introduce everyone, and thanks for everyone for joining so far today. So this is the first of the 2018 WorkTango webinar series. My name is Rob Catalano, and I'm very, very excited for today's topic about the 5-question leader. So what's interesting is and a little bit about WorkTango. So we help companies get real-time voice of the employees, but too often that information is sitting either in HR, an executive world, but we try and figure out how do we get that real-time feedback to leaders. And leaders are a big part of how successful companies get their employees engaged and performing. So when I first met Michael and read his book and heard everything that he was about, I was super excited and kind of nervous to ask him to be a part of this webinar series. So you know, we're all here today. He's he's come to join us, and we're really excited to have him here. So before I actually introduce him officially, just some quick housekeeping. A lot of questions that typically come in. Everyone will receive a follow-up email with a link to this video, so you can take a look at it again and rehash anything that's out there. And I know Mike will probably reinforce this, but definitely use the chat function. I haven't seen one of his webinars yet, but I heard it's very interactive and he wants people involved. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a chat section, which feel free, you can chat as well. And yeah, so hopefully we have a really interactive session. And again, appreciate everyone joining today. And I guess just by introduction, I want to introduce Michael Bungay Stanier. So by introduction, he left Australia 25 years ago to be a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University. And I love this, where his only significant achievement was falling in love with a Canadian, which is why he now lives in Toronto, having spent time in London and Boston. And I'm sitting in Toronto as well, so we're sitting not in the same place, but we're in the same city.
Exactly.
He's written a number of books, and his latest was a Wall Street Journal bestseller called The Coaching Habit. It sold over 250,000 copies, and praised as one of the few business books that actually make people laugh out loud. So that's a lot of pressure. So I don't know. We'll just stay tuned and see what happens there. And Michael was also the first Canadian Coach of the Year, which is pretty good for an Australian, and recently named the #3 global guru in coaching. So, which
is a very Canadian thing, right? Kind of, I won a bronze medal, and we're going to celebrate that. So fantastic.
So the floor is yours, Michael. Very excited to have you here, and thanks again.
Rob, look, thank you. We're fans of WorkTango. We're actually going to be clients of WorkTango. So we're delighted and have nothing but the greatest respect for the work you do around getting the voice of the employee to the people that matter. And I'm delighted to be talking to the WorkTango community right now and sharing this webinar. It is going to be interactive. In fact, I want to start right now just to get the kind of fingers working in the chat box. What I'd love you to do is write down the city in which you spent the holidays. For me, it's London, so I'm going to try and type that in right now. But where did you actually hang out over the holidays. Oh, this is cool. I mean, look at this. This is a global world. Toronto, Seattle, State College, Pennsylvania, California, Bangkok, Boston, Toronto again, Sedona. Oh man, this is a great list. Yeah.
I saw freezing Toronto.
Yeah, exactly. I was really cold in London, but then I looked at the temperatures in Toronto and I went, I've made a better choice here. So this is fantastic. People from all over the place. They've either traveled out from Toronto or they've just we've got a really global audience here. So wonderful. And I love how good you are at typing. That's perfect. Get used to it, because I'm going to get you using this chat box a lot, because this is not 1 hour of a man monologuing at you. It's a much more interactive process than that. So here we go. Let's get going on this. There we go. The 5-question leader. That's my name. There's my Twitter handle, if any of you are Twitter people as well. My real goal, paradoxically, is keep you all so busy that nobody has time to tweet anything out about this webinar. Very quick, just building on what Rob said. This is a starting point for what this is about. What people think of as the moment of discovery is really the discovery of the question. And, at Box of Crayons, so much of what we're about is giving practical coaching skills to busy managers. And what that boils down to is, can you help your managers and your leaders stay curious just a little bit longer and slow down the rush to action and advice giving? Because our take on it is most managers, most leaders, and I'm looking at you right now, are advice giving maniacs. You may not realize it, but you really are triggered to jump in and have the answer, have the idea, have the solution. And what we think is that these questions, these 5 questions I'm going to share with you, are part of helping discover the question, so you create moments of discovery for yourself and for the people that you lead and you influence. So here we go. There's me again, an invitation to connect with me on LinkedIn. I am, in fact, the only Michael Bungay Stanier in the entire universe. When I got married, I took my wife's name and we combined them into Bungay Stanier, so you'll find me there easily enough. There's a little bit about the book that Rob was kind enough to mention. We've actually just hit 350,000 copies sold, and it's been the #1 book on Amazon for coaching since its launch almost 2 years ago. So it's really going gangbusters. People love it as a book. Certainly, if you're so inclined, picking up a copy of that's marvelous. And there's that little piece about what we do at Box of Crayons. We teach 10-minute coaching so managers can build better teams and get better results. Enough about me blowing my trumpet. Let's get going onto a cool webinar. And here's how I want to start. I actually want to start with a question. And I want you to type your answer into the chat box here. And the question is, how focused do you plan to be during this webinar? And I want you to give yourself a score between 1, which is low, and 7, which is high. So just so you know what I'm talking about, 1 means I plan to be almost entirely distracted during this webinar. I have both my phones out and I'm actually texting right now. There's a band playing in the corner. My children are in the room with me and setting something afire. I've got paperwork. I'm just going to use Michael's mellifluous Australian accent as background while I get a whole bunch of other things done. That's a 1. 7, on the other hand, is you are bringing full focus to this webinar. You've got the noise cancelling headphones in, you've shut the door, you put a keep out sign, you put your phone away in the desk, you've shut down all the other windows. Because let's face it, even with somebody as good looking as Rob and as kind of talkative as me, it is so easy to get distracted on webinars. You know, it gets a bit boring. You're like, okay, I'll just do this. And then you miss 20 minutes of the webinar. So whatever your number is, and I'm seeing 5s and 6s and 7s rolling in, a 6.5 from Sonia, which is awesome.
10 just popped up.
A Sonia from another, 10 from another Sonia. So you don't want to hire her as an accountant because not her skill set, but love her commitment to focus. Whatever number you've given yourself, and I don't mind, the choice is yours. I would love you to adjust your environment just a little bit to make it easier to hit the number you've just given yourself. You know, maybe that's kind of turning your phone over or putting it into a drawer or putting it over on another part of the room. Maybe it's clearing away some paperwork. Maybe it's shutting down a few screens. Whatever you need to do to show up and get the most out of this webinar, that's what I'm encouraging you to do right now. So it shouldn't take much. Hey, Rob, I've kind of bullied you into being a kind of almost a co-facilitator with me on this. So I'm going to put you on the spot. 1 to 7, how focused are you planning on being during the webinar with me?
So I wrote 7+. I'm gonna say 6 because there's a part of me that has to make sure that we get to some questions, facilitate it.
Love it.
But I'm 7+ as much as I can be.
That's great. You are balancing different plates. You're keeping an eye on the chat and making sure that any questions that show up on the chat get answered and the like. But I was hoping it was going to be a high number, so I'm relieved about that. So the 5-question leader, you're waiting, I know, for what are these 5 questions? Because I'm saying if you just have 5 good questions, that may be enough to change the way you lead forever. So what are these 5 questions? I can't tell you just yet, because before I tell you what these 5 questions are, I've got to tell you about the 3 vicious circles of the busy manager, the 3 vicious circles. And here's your challenge. As I go through these 3 vicious circles, I want you to keep your ears open to decide which one of those vicious circles feels most real for you right now. One of them is probably going to just chime a little more sweetly or a little more loudly than the other 2. So which ones of these 3 vicious circles kind of rings most true for you right now? So here we go. Here's the very first vicious circle. There's the picture that sums it up. And this vicious circle is the overdependent team. The overdependent team. Here's what the vicious circle looks like. The more my team needs me, the more I give them the answers. But the more I give them the answers, the more my team starts needing me, and then the more they need me, and so it goes. And before you know it, you've somehow found yourself with a team unable to make a decision by themselves, unable to show initiative. They keep coming to you to ask for everything. They're feeling disempowered. You're feeling exhausted. It's just somehow, it's like somehow you've raised a series of vampires who are just there to suck your blood and suck your energy. I know I'm being a little melodramatic around this, but I think you get the point around it. So that's the very first of the vicious circles, which is an overdependent team. And Rob, I'm seeing a few people saying they're having a hard time hearing. Are you seeing that as well?
I should get off mute. Yeah, there's one person who said hard time hearing, so I'm just back and forth privately about
Perfect. Awesome. That's great. I'm shouting as much as I can, so hang in there, Autumn. All right, here's a second vicious circle. Here's the picture that sums it up. And this one, I know lots of you will recognize this. This one is a sense of overwhelm. A sense of overwhelm. So the more you get distracted, the more you lose focus. The more you lose focus, the more you get distracted, and the more stuff keeps flooding in, and the more stuff floods in and get distracted, the more you lose focus. And before you know it, you feel scattered, right? You're pulled this way, you're pulled that way. There's email in your inbox dating back to 2002. You've got meetings back to back to back to back to back. There's an endless amount of KPIs that you're apparently supposed to hit. You just feel in a state of anxiety the whole time because there's constant pressure to go, you're still not on top of things. What's going on? So there we go. The first circle, overdependent team. The second circle, sense of overwhelm. What's the third vicious circle? The third vicious circle is a sense of disconnect. A sense of disconnect from the work that matters. Because there's 2 types of work in this world. Work that has more impact and work that has more meaning. And this is when you kind of I feel like I've lost sight to the work that has impact and the work that has meaning. Here's what the vicious circle looks like. The less impact you have, the more you kind of give up. The more you kind of give up, the less impact you have. The less impact you have, the more you kind of give up. And you kind of just resign yourself to being a small, somewhat meaningless cog in some big, faceless, heartless machine. So here we go. 3 vicious circles. We've got a overdependent team. We've got a sense of overwhelm. And we've got a sense of disconnect. Now, you remember my challenge I set you, which is, so which of those 3 rings most true to you? I'd love to see that right now in the chat box. What's going on here? Number 2 from Larry, that's fantastic. Erin's also saying overwhelm. Heather, overwhelm as well. That's great. Oh, Paul has gone with number 1, an overdependent team. But I'm seeing a lot of the 2s coming through. But I love the comment I saw that zipped past me, which is, honestly, all 3. We see all 3 of these in our organization. And I think that's probably true, right? Even though you may be picking one right now, all 3 of those have a degree of familiarity to you. So you can guess that I'm thinking that these 5 key questions, a 5-question leader, may be the secret to breaking these circles. And that's true. They are the secret to breaking these circles. But before I get to the 5 essential questions, which I know you're keen to know about, I've got to tell you about one other thing. And this is actually 3 different types of work. This is going to be a really nice framing for us to get into the questions and really start seeing how they work. So here's a nice way to be thinking about your work. You know, Rob, actually, before I go on, I didn't ask you, which of those vicious circles kind of rings most true for you?
I swear I didn't write all 3.
That's perfect.
No, I think a big one for me is number 2, right? When you're leading a company, the needs from employees, from the space. Obviously, you want to get your name out there, whether it's speaking engagements.
Sales,
there's always
marketing.
a collection of things out there, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got a growing company, you're building a community of people who love you, you're building a brand, you're building a personal brand, all of that sense of overwhelm. Totally get it. Thank you. All right. 3 different types of work. Very simple, very powerful model to help figure out where do you get to spend your time. And here are the 3 different types of work. There are these 3. There is bad work, there is good work, and there is great work. Bad work, good work, and great work. Now, to be clear, what we're talking about here is not a measure of quality. They are a measure of impact. This is important because organizations tend to default to going, what's the quality of this? Even though it's pointless, is it a high enough quality? Does it hit ISO 9000, this useless piece of work that nobody cares about? What we're talking about here is the difference between impact versus quality. And impact is what matters. And here's the best way I've got to describe bad work. And you see it on the slide right now. Picture from my home country, Australia. Does anybody know what this animal is? Let's see it in the chat box. What's your guess about what we're seeing there as an animal? There we go. Michelle has nailed it. It's not a jackalope, although that makes me laugh. But a number of you clearly have been to Australia. They're seeing it as a wombat. It is exactly a wombat. It's not a koala. Koalas are little bears that kind of live up in trees. Wombat is like a small, hairy hippopotamus. Probably not related to a hippopotamus at all, but that's kind of a little bit what they look like.
Are they that big?
No, it's a small hip. So they're
Okay.
but they're heavy, like they're like 40 pounds or something. So they've got some muscle to them,
Okay.
for sure. This might be the most critical takeaway of not just this webinar, but actually any work you do with WorkTango. So you may want to write this down for sure. If you haven't done this already, you should go visit Australia. This is my key message to everybody here. This is why I'm really mentioning a wombat. Look at the weather. I'm in Toronto. The weather out there is freezing and it's actually warm compared to what it was a week ago. Australia, the weather's fantastic. The wine is fantastic. The men, very good looking. So here's the key takeaway. Go to Australia if you haven't been there and actually meet a wombat in person. But the other reason I'm talking to you about a wombat is it's an acronym. Here's the acronym. A wombat stands for a waste of money, bandwidth, and time. That's a pretty good definition of what bad work is. Here's the blunter definition of it. Bad work is the mind-numbing, soul-sucking, life-crushing work that makes you want to pick up a pen and stab yourself in the eye. It's the work that makes you go, this is my one and precious life, and I am somehow doing this. What happened here? How am I seeing my minutes and hours of my life ebb away doing this stuff? Now, I'll ask you to put this in the chat box. Does anybody here not know what I'm talking about? Just kind of I have no idea what you're talking about, Michael, in the chat box. And yeah, just what I thought. There's nobody writing in the chat box. We all know what bad work is. So that's great. Let's talk about good work as a second type of work. Rob, let me put you on the spot here. If bad work is the mind-numbing, soul-sucking, life-crushing, bureaucratic work, what do you think I mean when I say good work?
I don't know. I'm going to say work that progress, things that are necessary to provide value in the organization.
Perfect. That's a beautiful description of it. It's kind of necessary. It's what the organization needs to kind of keep ticking over. The fastest definition I can give you for good work is it is your job description. So it's productive, it's efficient, it's getting things done. It's what your boss wants you to do and what your boss's boss wants you to do. So this is important stuff. You want to have good work in your life. But the truth is also that with good work comes a sense of sometimes being stuck in a bit of a comfortable rut. You know you're busy, you know you're getting up early and working late, you know you've got a kind of degree of stress perhaps around that. But you will also know that this is no longer you stretching and growing. This is not the best version of yourself showing up. It's kind of you at 6.5 out of 10, not pushing the edge at 9 out of 10. I think it feels a bit like this. Some of you will recognize this as a drawing from Escher, the artist who does these kind of great visual tricks. Sometimes when you're doing good work, it feels like you're going up an endless staircase, but not really making a whole lot of progress. You're kind of moving stuff forward, but not having the impact that you really want. Which, of course, leads me perfectly to great work. What do you think I'm talking about? And Rob, I'm asking you this. What do you reckon I'm talking about when I say great work? What's that?
Something that's fulfilling, that drives a passion. Like, to your point, it's not your job description. Good is the enemy of great, Michael. Don't you know that?
I've heard that. I love that. So good is the enemy of great. Fantastic way of framing this. Here's my fastest definition of what great work is. Great work is the work that has more impact and the work that has more meaning. Both of those matter. Impact, kind of what serves the organization. It makes a difference. It moves things forward. It really pushes things. Great impact and meaning is the work that lights you up, the work you care about, the work that kind of speaks to who you are, the work that makes you go, this is why I signed up for this job in the first place. It's actually why the work of WorkTango is so important, because by hearing the voice of the employee, you're getting a reading on both the impact that they're having and the meaning that they're finding in that work. And the sweet spot is when you get both of those as aligned and as kind of maximized as possible. Let me just make the difference between good work and great work clear. I'm going to use a metaphor here. I think good work is a bit like mowing the lawn. Now look at that lawn. That is a fine looking lawn. I mean, if you mowed that lawn, you'd look at it and go, I'm pretty proud of that lawn. It's super green and it's got that stripe thing going. And you might think to yourself, this could be a metaphor for your year's work. And if you got to December 2018 and you look back on your year and it looked like this, you'd be thinking to yourself, did a good job. I nailed it. I mowed the lawn just as requested. But what you're not thinking to yourself is, man, see that third dark green line from the top? That's where we were really up against it. That's where the team pushed it. That's where we did something amazing. That bottom green line there, man, that was really hard, but we really came up with something that I'm thrilled about. I still talk about today. Like, honestly, it all felt the same. I just felt like I was mowing the lawn. I got a bunch of stuff done. I can't really remember much about it. That's good work. What does great work feel like? When you get to the end of the year and you can point to something like this. There's my elephant hedge. That's what I worked on. Now, you can see the lawn is there and the lawn's fine, but great work provides a degree of focus to actually say, this is the work that has more impact and work that has more meaning. And you as a manager and a leader create the space and the focus and the courage and the resilience for you and your team to say, how do we get to do more great work so we make more of a difference in the work that we're doing? Rob, is that making sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And I don't know if you're going to touch on it later, but at what point do you try and get that visualization of the elephant hedge in the mind of your employees? Or how do you divine that vision, decide what success looks like, or push them towards something a little more than just a green lawn? Yeah. And that's where my head is sometimes, is how do we motivate and inspire people to get there?
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think it's a great question, because I think part of what your challenge is going, how do we even find the time to think about this? Because most of the time, from when we wake up to when we go to bed, is we're so busy trying to get on top of our good work. And you're thinking to yourself, once I get on top of my good work, then I'll get to my great work. But the good work never ends. So you're like, how do I create space for that? And that's part of the job of a great leader, is to go, how do we create the space as a team and as individuals to say, what is my elephant going to be this year or this quarter or whatever it might be? Here's a challenge with great work, of course, because it's not just do I have time for it? It's actually more emotional than that, because the feeling of doing great work is twofold. On the one hand, you have excitement. You're like, I love doing this stuff. This is it. This is what I really got. This is why I wanted to do this job or have this role or join this company, for this reason. But at balancing that excitement is a degree of fear and anxiety and uncertainty, because when you step to doing great work, you step away from the known quantity of good work out to the edge of yourself, who you are, what you can do, what you've done before, what you're capable of, and you're pushing yourself to say, am I up for that? So there's part of us, all of us have a hunger to do more great work. And there's part of us that goes, in some ways, it's just easier to stick to the good work because it feels comfortable and familiar. And honestly, if I get all my good work done, my boss is happy enough, my organization's happy enough, it's okay. But we want to push people to do more great work. And finally, I think these 5 questions can help for that. These are the 3 attributes you need to do more great work: focus, encourage, and resilience. And I do think these 5 questions can help us get there. 5 questions for focus in particular, but they will help with courage and resilience as well. So here we are, halfway through the webinar. Finally, Michael gets to the 5 questions of the 5-question leader. But before I go there, let me tell you this, and I'm going to ask you to write this in the chat box. What's been most useful or most valuable for you so far from this webinar? What struck a chord for you? And while you're writing that, I'm actually going to put Rob on the spot because he hasn't seen this material before either. Rob, what's been most useful or most valuable for you so far?
Well, it's interesting, right? You put up that fear and excitement slide. And I've always positioned anytime someone's, we're hiring someone or trying to get someone motivated, I look at what I call the comfy chair syndrome or the roller coaster. And I ask people, like, are you on a roller coaster or are you in a comfy chair? And that's the one question I use to find out if they're in comfy chair, then how do we get them to more of the excitement and fear part of it, just like you're getting on a roller coaster. So that was just a good reminder to ask those types of questions, make sure it's top of mind. And the other part we talked about in terms of finding time for it.
Yes.
It's a good reminder. I used to theme my days and focus, one of my days just on this type of work. And it's just a good reminder to start 2018 right and maybe theme my days a little better.
Very nice. And one of the most powerful exercises you can do, this would be really simple for people to take away and do right away, is to just draw a big circle, bit of paper, and then just divide your circle into 3 segments that represent how much bad work, how much good work, and how much great work you're currently doing. And then go to yourself, am I happy with that? It's a really powerful management tool. I'd be interested to ask people on this one, do you know what the great work is for the people on your team? Get them to do the circle and say, hey, bad work is this, good work is this, great work is this. What's your current mix? And are you happy with that? Ask your boss, what's your great work? And how can I help you with that? Because helping your boss do her great work is a really smart thing to be doing for your future success as well. So, I wrote a book about this, my previous book called Do More Great Work. It's about 5 or 6 years old. It's got 15 exercises to help you identify, start, and sustain a great work project. And so if, it's on Amazon and the like, so you can certainly pick it up there. The very first exercise in that book is this circle exercise, which is like an audit around where am I now? So we are going to go through these 5 questions, but it's not just going to be a theoretical, here are 5 good questions. We're going to use them to answer the challenge, how do I do more great work? So this is like live virtual coaching, if you like. You're going to be writing your answers down. But the question, the challenge you've got is, how do I get to do more great work? And let me prime you with that before I give you the first question. Look at all the stuff that's going on for you at the moment. And I know, because, it's kind of the first or second week back for most of us after the holiday break. Most of us are like, overwhelmed at the moment because we're like, I didn't do any work for 2 weeks. It was awesome. But now there's this crushing to-do list and email inbox and the like. And I'm just trying to swat flies and mosquitoes to try and get on top of things again. But thinking of all the projects that you're touching or you could touch, I want you to think about what could be your great work project. Like if you had to pick a thing to say, this is what I'm going to say, let's say the next 60 to 90 days, putting more time, more effort, more focus into, what's a possibility around what your great work project might be? It might be a thing you're launching. It might be a team you're on and how to elevate the team. It might be a process that you want to think about. It might be a relationship that you care about. It might be a project in some way that you're working on. Who knows what it is for you? It doesn't have to be perfect. Just take your best guess. And I'm going to ask you some questions, and we're going to just kind of I'm going to invite you to write your answers down in the chat box. Now, if you're feeling kind of a little shy, a little vulnerable, you don't have to do that. The choice is yours entirely. But in my experience of running these webinars before, sharing your answer and seeing other people's answers is part of the magic and the learning that you might get from this webinar. So the invitation is yours. If you'd like to, write your answers down in the chat box.
One thing as well, just as a reminder, some people are sending the notes to all panelists. So we're seeing that. But if you switch it to all panelists and attendees, it's a good way to share a lot of your responses with everyone else on the call. So I've seen kind of a mix of that. So I just wanted to get that on there.
That's great, because we get to see all the answers and they're magical. But make sure everybody can see that if you're willing to share, because it's really tapping the wisdom of this 100 or so people so that we all get to benefit from that. So thinking about what that great work project, let me give you the first question. It's called the Kickstart Question, because it's a really powerful way to start almost every conversation. Because here's the thing, our belief is if you can't coach in 10 minutes or less, you don't have time to coach. That means you've got to kind of get into the interesting conversation fast. And we find that most managers struggle to kind of get into it, get going on what on what these conversations might be. You need a question that kind of helps people deep dive into something interesting rather than doing chit chat. So the Kickstart question is this: what's on your mind? What's on your mind? So thinking about your challenge to do more great work, if you're willing to share it with us and with all attendees, what's on your mind? In a sentence or two, write down what your great work project or your great work focus might be. And Rob, while people are thinking about that and writing it, because I'm going to coach you as we go through this, so we're role modeling what this looks like. Thinking about great work for you, head of WorkTango, man with kind of many responsibilities, that overwhelm was that number one circle for you. What's on your mind in terms of thinking about doing more great work?
Yeah, so it's funny. I just finished a long conversation before this webinar on it, but it's not only bringing on the right people, but inspiring our current people. So for us, it starts with employees, and if we're going to grow at the rate we are, how do we bring on that talent as well as maintain and retain the ones we currently have?
So if you had to pick one of those, because there are two really big ones, maybe just pick one for the sake of this conversation, that onboarding process or keeping the current employees engaged and excited and thrilled, which one would you pick?
Let's say finding and recruiting passionate talent.
Finding and recruiting passionate talent. I love that. So that's a great challenge, a really good workplace challenge. And look, what a great list of other challenges that are rolling through this. Everything from doing more through staff than doing myself, so the power of delegating, finding a great group of people to work with, providing better assistance for your manager from Michelle. That's wonderful as well. People are kind of fired up. And what I hope you're noticing is how even just writing it down, articulating this great work project for yourself already makes it feel more real, more important, more valuable. It's gone from floating around in a sort of vague way in your head to feeling like tangible. And Cindy's just ordered Do More Great Work from Amazon. Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate that. So that's the Kickstart question, which is fantastic. And you need to know, we're practicing it now, but I want you to be writing down these questions because I want you to be thinking to yourself, oh yeah, when I'm having a meeting with my manager, with my team, when I'm starting an email, this is a great conversation to more quickly get into the real topic, get into the juicy stuff faster. That's number one, the Kickstart question. The second question is, and I'm just trying to check my notes about how I want to teach this for you. Right, I'm going to give you two questions in a row now, and then we're going to practice both of these questions and combine them almost in a script. So the second question is the focus question. And the focus question just bears in mind that so often we're not quite clear what we're really dealing with. I mean, what we've got is some great things coming through in the chat box, but at the moment they're a little bit high level, a bit abstract, and we want to get into a more detailed conversation. So the focus question is this: what's the real challenge here for you? What's the real challenge here for you? And actually how that's written really matters. How that's written really matters. I want you to play with the whole question, because I could ask you, Okay, so I see what's on your mind. So what's the challenge? And that is an okay question, but most likely it's going to be a bit of a high level restatement of what you've already written down. I could ask you, and this is an upgrade, what's the real challenge? And now you see it becomes more powerful because you're saying, hey, there's more than one challenge going on. Which one feels like the real challenge here for you? So now people are trying to figure that out. But it really becomes powerful when you add those last two words to the question. What's the real challenge here for you? Because what the interesting conversation is not about the topic, it's about how you're dealing with the topic. The interesting conversation with Rob is not about onboarding and finding great people to hire. It's about what's his challenge, what's his role, what's his place in doing that. So that's the focus question. And I'm going to get you to practice this in just a minute, but I want to give you the third question right away so you can see how the great combination they make together. Perfect. Yep. Sorry, I'm just reading my notes, making sure I got this right. And the third question, best coaching question in the world. Just 3 words to the best coaching question in the world. And the acronym is AWE. And I love that because that means it's literally an awesome question. So let me tease you with this. In the chat box, what's your best guess at what the question is AWE? So 3 words, that's the acronym. What do you reckon AWE stands for? Julie's gone for and what else? What do other people think? And what else? Yeah, that's good from Mumtaz as well. Yeah, well, the truth is, are we excited, Brian? I love that. Always welcome excitement. Antonio, that's fantastic as well. But actually, are we engaged? Another great question. But I'm going to have to say those first 2 folks nailed it. The best coaching question in the world. And what else? And what else? Here's why. Because the first answer somebody gives you is never the only answer, and it's rarely the best answer. Right? Never the only answer. It's rarely never the only answer, and it's rarely the best answer. The second reason is it's a brilliant self-management tool. Because you may remember way back when I said what we do at Box of Crayons, helping busy managers, giving them the practical tools so they can coach in 10 minutes or less. What that means is, can we help managers be more coach-like by staying curious a little bit longer, rushing to action and advice giving a little bit more slowly? And most managers, most leaders, people like you and me, as soon as you hear something, you're like, I'm going to add value here by starting to tell you stuff, what to do, what my ideas are, what you should try. And actually what you want to do is slow that down. And what else is a brilliant way of just slowing that down. So here's how we're going to use these these questions. And I'm going to role model it with Rob so you can go along with that. I'm going to start with what's the real challenge here for you? Rob, you told us what's on your mind. So what's the real challenge here for you? You'll watch me, see me listening. And then I'm going to ask Rob and ask you, I'll go, good, what else? What else is a real challenge here for you? And then I'm going to say, good, and what else? What else is a real challenge here for you? And then I'm going to go, okay, Rob, knowing that, what's the real challenge here for you? So let's start. Let's see how it goes. So Rob, you've told us what's on your mind, what great work might be out of those 2. You picked one. Thinking about that, what's the real challenge for you in making that happen?
I mean, personally for me, so it's funny, we talk about the concept of CEO really is Chief Engagement Officer. So
Nice.
like the belief is as leadership here, our goal is to engage our employees and our customers, right?
Yeah.
Now, how do I do all of that and find fantastic talent as well?
Yeah.
Right? So there's a big level of prioritization. I think that is a challenge for me, given all the stuff. Number 2 from the last time.
Perfect. Yeah. So there's just a whole bunch of other things demanding Rob's attention. That's part of the real challenge. What else, Rob? What else is the real challenge here for you in this?
Well, I mean, a challenge is finding talent is obviously hard in general, but being a smaller growth company in a dynamic market, it's not easily available to us, right? It's harder for us to compete, let's say.
Got it. And you see how Rob's going a little bit into we do this, we do that. And what I'm trying to do is work on the for you. So I get that about WorkTango, about, you're a small player, feisty, but you're smaller compared to some of the bigger players. But what else for you, Rob, is a challenge in terms of finding this brilliant talent?
I think the big part, I think, is making it a major priority, like personally prioritizing it.
Yeah. So I think we're getting close to that. It feels like that's becoming crisper, right? So if you had to sum it up, and here's the final way of me asking it. Okay, so what's the real challenge here for you?
Maybe I'm just not good enough, Michael.
It feels like kind of in the last time you answered it, you kind of got there, right? Which is, man, I'm really seeing, I talk about it as a priority. I've got to make it a priority. I've got to give it that time and that space.
Yeah.
So folks, I'd love to see this in the chat box. I would like you to think to yourself, write it out. What's the real challenge here for you? When you think about the challenge you set yourself, the real challenge for you. You may have written down on paper or on your keyboard, wherever, worked through that and what else and what else. But what I'd love you to do is just go through that exercise and ask yourself, okay, so what's the real challenge? What else is the real challenge? What else is the real challenge? Okay. What's the real challenge here for you? And
I was being a bit, obviously, challenging on purpose, but like at what point do you really need to drive it out of someone, or really help them dive deeper? And does that happen often with people? Yeah.
So my working hypothesis is we default into action and trying to fix pretty much the first thing that shows up almost all the time. Mm-hmm. And just spending, 40 seconds, staying a little bit more curious about solving the real challenge can be extremely powerful. Because here's what I'm seeing from the comments in the chat box. People have moved from an external challenge, this is the thing I'm trying to fix, to much more of an internal challenge. This is the thing I need to deal with about me. And it means that actually the real challenge is different from the first thing that they put out there. And why that matters, Rob, is that if you are busy solving the first challenge, you're now solving the wrong challenge. Mm-hmm. And then when you add to that the fact that your advice isn't nearly as good as you think it is, you're now offering up slightly crappy advice to solve the wrong problem, which in no way is a strong leadership stance. So what we notice most often with this is a couple of things. One is the problem shifts and changes a little bit, sometimes a lot, but sometimes just a little bit. It becomes more personal. It becomes about, it's not about finding the great talent. It's about finding the time to find the great talent. So that goes from external to being about Rob. Mm-hmm. And it often creates an aha moment. And sometimes, this may be true for some of the folks on the call right now, is sometimes what you get is when you get too clear on what the real challenge is, this solution kind of presents itself. I mean, if I was to ask you, now you've identified that actually holding the time and space to make this a real challenge, do you have ideas about how you could go about doing that?
Yeah, even my example earlier about, theming my days or, staying off emails till 11 a.m. So that's one focus in the morning, like those type of things.
Yeah, exactly. So already you get to start solving your own problem. So it becomes even more efficient because when you get the real challenge, often people are like, if that's the real challenge, I know what I need to be doing. And they get on with it. And you're like, that took me 45 seconds and I've just rocked an awesome coaching conversation. Perfect. So brilliant. I love honestly, the vulnerability and the kind of honesty that we're seeing in the chat box is truly wonderful to see. So thank you for being so open to that. And I hope that's been useful, just seeing how your idea of what the challenge is has shifted by me going, what's the real challenge here for you and what else? And what else is the challenge? Okay, so what's the real challenge here for you?
Mike, I don't want to derail things, but one thing that I'm thinking about is what happens if and again, when I was trying to play that role, like what happens when the employee doesn't really provide that challenge, or what the challenge is and need to kind of get it in front of them? How do you address that if they're not participating in this conversation or getting deeper?
So you walk that fine line between going, do I let them figure this out themselves? Do I let them fail a little bit so there's learning there? Or is my role here to actually go, that's interesting that you said that. Let me find a way of actually telling you what the real challenge is that I need to work with. Being more coach-like doesn't mean that you give up every pretense of leadership to say, no, just do whatever you want. That's fine. I asked you a few questions. Good luck with it. But it is slowing down that rush to give them the answer, because more often than not, they'll find an answer. They'll find a good answer. And it might be even subtly but usefully different from the thing that you were going to suggest in the first place. And because they figured it out themselves rather than you told them it, it's going to be that much more powerful for them.
Okay. Great, thanks.
My pleasure. Let's get on to question number 4, the foundation question. You know, when I was writing the book, the Coaching Habit book, I was thinking to myself, maybe I should call this the goldfish question, because when you ask this question, and it's another simple, short question, sometimes your eyes pop open and they make that kind of guppy thing that goldfishes do, because it's a hard question to answer. And the foundation question is simple and difficult. And the question is this: so what do you want? What do you want? You know, one way of thinking about what we do at Box of Crayons is we help people build adult-to-adult relationships with those people with whom they work. And you know, most people go, oh, that sounds good, but what does that even mean? Well, a definition that I like around adult-to-adult relationships is it's feeling that you can ask for what you want, knowing that the answer may be no. And the truth is, most of us are not that good at asking for what we want, or knowing what we want, or being able to say yes or no to whatever requests like that might be. So let me ask you, and I guess I'd love to see this in the chat box. I know you've told us what's on your mind. You've drilled down a little bit and gone, okay, so what's the real challenge here for me? And for many of you, it's shifted to a kind of, here's what I need to do differently. Here's what I've got in my own way. Here's the thing that's hard for me. Knowing that, what do you want? You know, what do you really want? You can imagine me almost repeating the and what else. You know, what do you want? And what else do you want? And what else do you want? Okay, so what do you really want? So Rob, knowing that your challenge is finding the time so that you can give finding great talent the real attention that it fully deserves, knowing that, what do you really want to help move that forward?
I mean, basically the time and focus to make that a reality, but also a sound approach too, right? Like it's time isn't going to solve anything. So I think it's a combination.
Nice. I love that. And see the power of crystallization. I need perhaps an even better process to really elevate our game. So we show up in a different way and we find people in a different way. And I need maybe some support, maybe some tactics, some commitment, some accountability. These are all possibilities to really hold the time, so that when I say I'm doing 2 hours a day to find talent, I'm doing 2 hours a day to find talent. So for you, as much as you want to share it on the chat box, let's see what you want when you think about what the real challenge is here for you. So lots of thoughtful replies kind of coming in here. I know I'm kind of moving you quickly through this. I want to show you how fast coaching can be. You know, our whole piece is Box of Crayons. We teach busy managers to coach in 10 minutes or less. We teach 10-minute coaching. So lots of thoughtful replies coming in. And one of the things that I love about these 5 questions is that they're kind of recyclable. So one of the options we had, if we wanted to, is we could say, okay, if that's what you really want, and really powerful to get that insight about this is the thing I really want, I can take you back to the focus question and go, if that's what you really want, what's the real challenge here for you to get that? And that'll take that conversation just down to a deeper level, really fast, but suddenly we're talking about really the real struggle about what's going on, rather than a more superficial conversation that's probably rolling on if you don't have these questions to drill down. So that's brilliant. We've got what do you want? I've given you that kind of sense that you can remember and what else, and use and what else around that. Now what I want to do is give you the 5th and final question. This is the learning question. In the book, there are actually 7 questions. So this is number 7 in the book, just number 5 in the webinar. So if you want to find out what the mysterious 2 missing questions are, well, honestly, you can just Google the coaching habit, and there's plenty of articles that talk about all 7 of the questions. If you're feeling generous and you want to spend $10, you can always buy a copy of the book as well. The fifth question is the learning question. So one of the most effective things you can do as a manager and a leader is to be a teacher. Help your people learn. Help them grow through learning. And if you go, yeah, that's a good idea, you need to understand how people learn. People do not learn when you tell them stuff. Very annoying, but that's true. They just don't learn when you tell them stuff. In one ear, out the other ear pretty quickly. People don't learn when they even do stuff. I mean, they learn a little bit about that, but they don't really get the aha moment. They learn when they have a moment to reflect on what's just happened. So if you really want to elevate your meetings, your conversations, your one-to-ones, formal, informal, adding the learning question at the end of almost every conversation with your boss, with your team, with your vendors, with Rob, whoever it is, this can really help. So the learning question is, what was most useful, or variation, what was most valuable here for you? What was most useful or most valuable? And when people answer that question, they not only get the aha themselves, they extract the value that they may miss themselves, but as a bonus, they give you feedback about what they found most useful or most valuable so that you can do things better and differently next time. So let's do that for this webinar, because I want you to extract the value that's most useful for you from this webinar. Thinking about everything we've covered, the check-in questions, the 3 vicious circles, the bad work, good work, great work, any one of the 5 questions. Maybe you found something interesting about how I facilitated and how I've run this webinar. Maybe it's something about how good-looking Rob is and how he shared his stories. Who knows? But thinking about just one thing, what was most useful or most valuable for you from this webinar? And let's look. I want everybody to look what's happening in the chat box, because what others are learning, you can learn as well.
While people are typing, it was a really good question that just showed up was, have you seen the and what else question work in big group settings?
For sure. Yeah, with big group settings, part of the challenge you're doing is you're trying to manage the space. Because if you're like, I've got 60 people and I need to hear and what else from everybody, that's the first 2 hours of your meeting gone, which doesn't work at all. So what I tend to do is I go, turn to the person next to you, answer this question in a pair. That means it's much harder to opt out of that question. And then let's hear from 2 or 3 of you about what came up for you. So people get to talk, people get to dive into it, and then you kind of share the wisdom, but in a more facilitated, controlled way. So lots of beautiful stuff rolling through on what was most useful and most valuable. I love Mary going, stay curious longer. That's the underlying message here, which is like, how can I stay curious a little bit longer? How can I rush more slowly to action and advice giving, which is the default of so much that we're working through here. So that's brilliant. Just a few things just to wrap us up, and then we'll open it up for any final questions. I think you're kind of answering this for me already, which is brilliant. Here's something for you if you want. This is really opt-in only if you're interested in it. boxofcrayons.com/5QL. If you go there, you'll see a sign-up page. I think it's a 6-lesson email course that just reinforces what we've talked about today over the next 30 days or so. So I call this drip irrigation, hence the picture. So we keep the soil moist so that at least by mid-February, you've still got some faint idea of what we covered in today's 5-question leader. So choice is yours entirely. If you're like, I have too much email, the last thing I want to do is add more email to my life. I totally get it. But for those of you looking for a reminder about the course and to stay engaged in the learning, boxofcrayons.com/5QL. There's me, another invitation to connect on LinkedIn if you're so moved. That's the bit about Box of Crayons. You've heard about that plenty. I do have a favor to ask. Those of you who have picked up a copy of the book, I'm trying to get to 1,000 reviews on Amazon. I'm about 900. I figure at 1,000 reviews, you can call the book a classic. So I'm almost there. If you've read the book and you're so moved, a review on Amazon.com, super appreciated if you're so inclined. And I just want to hand it over to Rob, but I also want to say thank you to WorkTango and to Rob for sponsoring this, for championing this, giving me an opportunity to talk to the WorkTango community. Rob, thank you, and over to you.
Yeah, so while I'm just saying some last parting words, definitely take a look at some of the questions popping up in the chat because there's a couple of really good ones. But I really just want to say what's on the screen there. A big thank you to all of you to participated, being involved, providing your feedback. Again, this was, when Michael's like, want to challenge a standard webinar, I think you brought it to life. So the thank you extends from everyone on the group call to you as well. Really enjoyed it, learned a lot. Really love being put on the spot with a bunch of questions I didn't expect. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
And again, I did learn a lot. So it was very, very valuable. And I guess for everyone else, we're going to be doing this on a more frequent basis every 6 to 8 weeks in terms of WorkTango webinar series. So the next one will be in March. You'll hear more about that in a follow-up email. And there will be a follow-up with a video link to see this again and reinforce some of the things you already learned. So look out for that as well. So that's it on my end. We do have 5 more minutes, maybe address a couple of the questions that came up. So if you can answer a couple, I will try and find other ones as they come in. And a couple people's hands are raised. I'll get to you in a second. Or if it's a question, feel free to put it in the chat. But I'd love to see just address all the questions here as well.
So I'm just pointing to, there's a Twitter chat about the book that's starting tonight. Julie's mentioning it. #EduCoach. So these are people, many of whom are in the sector of education. But there's going to be like a 7 or 8 week weekly gathering to pick a chapter of the book and dive into it. So a really great community to get into the book if you're so inclined. So that's great. Natty's asking, how do I get it from Bangkok, Thailand? Natty, I don't know. I'm sorry about that. You're going to have to hunt around for it and see if you can find it. It's consider it great work. Good luck with the quest around that. Yeah, I've got a question about how do you avoid the drama that may come with some of this stuff? And that's a great question. There's a section in the book called about the drama triangle, which is all about the drama, the 3 roles that often play out when things get dysfunctional: the persecutor, the victim, the rescuer. I'm pretty sure we've got some videos on the Box of Crayons Movies YouTube site. So if you go to Box of Crayons Movies on YouTube and type in drama triangle, there's a bunch of resources there that are directly about the drama. Yeah, I'm afraid to ask that first question, what's on your mind? I get that for sure. I think often it's in the context of, hey, we're working, it's this type of meeting, it's this type of conversation. So it happens less commonly than you might think that they go off on some sort of random, this is what's on my mind. It's much more about there's a context for us having this conversation. So the drama doesn't show up as much as you might think. I think that's all the questions I saw posted, Rob. Anything else for you?
Yeah, a lot looked like more comments. My favorite was I started at 2 and ended at 10, so that was nice.
I love that too.
There was I guess one comment. I think it's more of a comment, but so this is from the name's not showing up. Allison, when those I'm coaching are expressing burnout, doing the exercise around your current mix of 3 work types to start the discussion, then the 5 questions may really help someone get unstuck. So just good to hear some thoughts on how people have used or leveraged these as well in a way, not start with the 5 questions.
And Cindy's done a lovely thing about reading the book, immediately implementing it. And I didn't get to see the text message that you captured there, but, or maybe it is. I want to tell you, I've noticed, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to call you the question master. Fantastic. So Cindy's read the book, taken on 7 questions. She's already been elevated to the question master. So you too could have that impressive title just by buying a book. Simple as that. That's awesome.
Okay, wonderful. Well, again, what I will do is we'll try and transcribe some of these. If we didn't get to any questions, then we'll try to make sure that we answer them. But again, a big thank you to everyone participating. Michael, man, great job. Really loved doing this with you, and I really appreciate it. And everyone have a good remainder of the day.
Awesome. Bye, everybody.
Take care, everyone.